Wanted to do an applause.
I did,
there.
and
yeah,
I
let's
was
just
on
do it.
my own.
Let's just do it.
Thanks.
No, it deserves it. And look, so many people have been so excited for this as well. Already, we've had a comment coming in from Brian. Brian says, looking forward so much to Kate's film about an extraordinary woman from history. Thanks for bringing it to the big screen.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks, Brian.
Oh, already?
That's really nice.
And look, I mean, so what can you tell us about Lee? What was she like? And kind of what was the part that she played during World War II?
So Lee Miller was an utterly extraordinary life force of a woman. She had grown up in New York. She's an American woman. She grew up in Poughkeepsie, which is just outside of New York City. And she spent time in Paris. She worked with a photographer, Man Ray, and she was a model, but it was a sliver of her life. And so if you Google Lee Miller, the words muse, ex-model, cover girl will pop up. But it was a short period of her life, and actually the big important part of her life was when she, as a messy, flawed, middle-aged woman, just put her big girl knickers on and went to war by herself and photographed what was happening on the front line for the female readers of Vogue, because so much was kept from public view. And Lee was a person who believed in pursuing telling the truth. She believed in correcting wrongs that were done. She had a serious injustice done to her as a young woman, and this was something that I think propelled her through her life and drove her to uncover the truth and to be that visual voice really for the victims of conflict. And she worked with a Rolleiflex camera, and it's a really interesting camera. It doesn't sit in front of the eye, it sits in front of almost the heart actually. And so by doing that she was able to form really interesting connections with people, because she could have a conversation, a very sincere conversation, whilst she was documenting what was happening to those people in real time. And she was just an unbelievable lady with phenomenal courage. She sort of redefines, I think, in many ways, she redefines femininity, you know, for her and for us. It becomes resilience and power and courage, as opposed to all the flowery things that you would connect with that word, femininity. And so for me, she was an incredibly modern woman at a time, 80 years ago, you know, all the things that we all are raising our young girls to be now, Lee was already that woman. She was just extraordinary.
And you sort of fell in love with her story by accident, really, and it was through buying an antique table.
Yeah, it's completely true. I have some friends who work in an auction house in Cornwall, and they research really interesting pieces that come in very great detail. And my friend Mimi called me and she said, "Kate, there's this table that's come in. I just got to tell you about it. I think you should get it." I'm like, "Okay, tell me." And it was a table that was in a house that was owned by Roland Penrose and his sister Annie Penrose. Roland became Lee Miller's husband, and they had a child together. And they would spend these surrealist, wonderful summers of love and experimentation and eating and enjoyment in this wonderful house around this table. It was the only table in the property. And Max Ernst was there, and Man Ray and Pablo Picasso and all of these incredible people, and Lee Miller and Roland Penrose. And I got the table and I sat down at this table, and it is a beautiful table. And I sat down at the table and I thought, my God, Lee Miller sat at this table, wow. Why hasn't anyone made a film about her? And cut to 9 years later, 9 years it took me, and we did it. We did it, and I feel, honestly, the pride I feel in myself and all of us who came together to bring it to life, because it was a real journey, it was a fight, it was a long development process, putting the financing together. You know, it's very hard to make films as a woman about women, and but you have to do it. You know, as girls, you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going and sometimes not give up, and that's what Lee did. And I think how we made the film really kind of reflects who she was as a spirit. Yeah.
And you were just telling us before we started the interview, you know, how hard it was, because of course you were producing as well. So you were across the creative completely, across casting. Was it nice to be able to make that call to your co-stars and say, look, you've got the job, and be on that side of it for a change?
Honestly, it was just extraordinary, because everything at the end of the day does rest on the actors who are right there, and you know, we really can't get it wrong. We have to make it as believable as possible, and everyone else behind the scenes doing all that incredible work beforehand to make that possible for us. And so we were just so lucky with our cast. We have Andrea Riseborough, Marion Cotillard, Alexander Skarsgård, and Andy Samberg, who he plays Jewish photographer Davy Sherman, who was sort of Lee's right-hand man through the war. They were very close friends. And as a Jewish man himself, Andy Samberg, he really wanted this part, and he put himself out there and he auditioned and he really went for it. And I was the lucky one asked to make that call and say, we'd love you to play this role. And the first thing he said was, my mum's going to be so proud. Isn't that sweet?
Lovely.
Nice.
I know,
Really lovely.
I know. And it just,
privilege,
it meant
yeah.
so much to him. And he's absolutely brilliant in the film. It's the first serious role he's ever played. He's known for comedy, but he was just incredible and an amazing partner for me. I was very lucky to have him.
Well, the film is incredible. You can watch Kate's film Lee in cinemas from the 13th of September. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Still to come, Alexander Armstrong on evoking the magic of